Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, this is Sven, and we are bored of it, and welcome to our review of Eat the Reich, a 2 to 3 session RPG powered by the Havoc engine. In Eat the Reich, players will take on the role of the Fang Commandos, who happen to be vampires. Set during World War II, you'll be airdropped into occupied Paris with a single goal: to end the war by killing Hitler and drinking his blood.
Eat the Reich is an action-packed rollercoaster ride of an RPG, so you want to make sure you've watched all of your favourite action movies before playing to give you some inspiration. Now, before we get into how to play and what we think, please note that we are sent the physical copy by the publisher for review.
Eat the Reich divides Paris up into 3 zones with a number of locations in each. Players will start the game where they get coffin-dropped into Paris in Zone 3. Their aim is to progress through the zones to find Hitler, who is holed up in a Zeppelin moored at the Eiffel Tower in Zone 1. Players will hit 2 to 3 locations per zone. In each location, there'll be objectives and threats. The objective is the goal for that location and could be something like ruin this Nazi funeral or make it to the other side. There may be a secondary objective, which is usually related to loot that players can find. Then you have the threats, which are the enemies that you'll face, of which there may be multiple.
Eat the Reich is played over a number of rounds, and within a round, every player will take 1 turn. On a player's turn, they describe what they want to do, and then they roll using an appropriate skill. So, for example, if they're fighting close quarters, they'll use brawl, and that will give them a certain number of dice to roll. Most players will also be adding or including equipment into their description, which is on their character sheet, or abilities, and that's because using these will allow you to roll an extra die. However, for most of these, if you use that ability, that equipment in a certain way described on the equipment, you'll get to add even more dice to your roll. Then roll, and any 4, 5s, and 6s are successes, with 6s being worth 2 successes. Then players will assign them. Eat the Reich to us is arguably more board gamey than the average RPG we've played, and this is because of the way you allocate successes. You will have a threat and objective level in gameplay, and you can allocate your successes to these values to lower them. And when these reach 0, either you complete the objective or the threat is eliminated temporarily. Otherwise, you can allocate successes to Harvest Blood, which you spend to activate some of your abilities. You can allocate 6s to special abilities, or finally, you could use your successes to block incoming damage, because the GM will roll attack dice based on the attack value of threat that you're engaged with, and if you take any hits, you will get an injury. Eat the Reich is recommended to be played across 2 to 3 sessions. This is because it is very intense and action focused and combat focused, so it's very high octane all the time, and obviously that can get a bit tiring or numbing if you do it for too long. So it's really recommended to keep this to shorter sessions, recharge, and then come back kind of fresh and ready to do it all over again. So you will win the game if you drink all of Hitler's blood, and you will lose the game if all the players die before you get to that point.
How much you enjoy Eat the Reich will very much depend on what you're looking to get out of your RPGs. We are somewhat divided in our opinion, with it being the least favourite of the RPGs that we've played. And that's just because I find it a little bit repetitive and very combat focused, rather than the fact that there's no enjoyment to be had at all. I still think it's very fun.
Yeah, and I think for my part, I found it bombastic. I very much enjoyed it. It created a lot of laughter between me and the group at the table. But I get where Tally's coming from, because your average RPG often has non-combat elements. It has some downtime, it has maybe some character communication, whereas this really is all action all the time. And in Eat the Reich's defense, although there are some skills that will let you sneak or let you converse, generally the majority of them and abilities and equipment are all focused around combat. So players are just kind of naturally funneled into combat scenarios, one after the other after the other. And that obviously isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. As a GM, my favorite element of Eat the Reich was the flexibility of the system. It's not something that's tied down by rules and regulations and stuck in reality. You don't have to worry about ammo count or enemy health, positioning, weapon damage, anything like that. You just let the players say what they're doing, and it pretty much happens if they get the successes to spend to do it. And if they're trying to put things a little bit too much in their favor with their creativity, there's even a tool for that. You can put it between or behind a secondary objective, which is, I think, a really nice touch. I just very much enjoyed the fluidity this creates in the interaction between me as a GM and the players, and the way that we could kind of collaboratively build this world very easily without really having to worry about stats.
This also extends to the players. It's great fun to be able to say whatever you want to do and just do it without worrying about if there's a ladder here or worrying about the placement of the enemies. However, don't worry that it's all on players to be imaginative. Another great element of Eat the Reich are the character designs, which are pre-made. They are full of character, and as they come preloaded with equipment and abilities, there's plenty of subtle hints to direct the players. Since equipment and abilities are usually more useful in certain situations, like using a Panzerfaust on an armoured vehicle, players are naturally pushed to create these scenarios to get the most out of them. It's a really smart system because as a baseline, you're driven to use your items just because they let you roll more dice, which incentivizes you to be more creative so that you can roll more dice, and on your last use of an item, you get to roll even more dice. So we just think this is a really nice link between creativity and outcome. Coming back to the characters, they are really vibrant caricatures, which are tremendous fun to inhabit, and we really appreciate their diversity in terms of their equipment and abilities, as it allows different players to occupy different niches. The same could be said of the locations, of which there are a diverse array, many of which have objectives which invite players to go wild. Each one has a short description, enough to set the scene, but not so much that players can't contribute. Many of them are particularly memorable in their setting, especially if they contain a mini-boss.
As we wrap up, it's worth just taking some time to talk about the book itself. It is a delight because it's easy to read, it has excellent artwork, it is full of thematic touches, and it really immerses you in the game's world. Readability, excellent. Examples, clear. Rules, very streamlined, simple, well presented, well laid out, with visual examples as well. Always great. So it's been an enjoyment to read this, particularly because I have read thousands and thousands of pages of RPG rulebooks. This one's only 30 something, and it still managed to get this absolutely great game packed into there and have you playing with minimal effort from a GM. Final thoughts? Although I think we differ on our overall enjoyment, I think we definitely both did enjoy our time playing this. I had a great time. I think it's a really wonderful, short, sharp, easy to run as a GM, well written, well designed, action-packed little adventure. I would really recommend it if you're interested and anything we've said has kind of resonated with you. Don't know what you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. We touched upon it. I very much enjoyed playing it. It's just that it is one of my least favourites that we've played just because of that kind of repetitive element. I felt like my creative juices run out at some point because it is a lot of, injuring people, combating people, and at some point there's only so much you can do with that, in my opinion. But maybe that's just because I'm not that imaginative, and someone with a better imagination than me that can make more out of it. But I still recommend it.
Yeah, and I think the one maybe negative that I would have, which isn't really negative, but it's limited use sounds a bit mean, but obviously we've run through it twice now, and I think we're ready to put it on the shelf for a while before getting out again, just because it is kind of this like self-contained 2 to 3 part story that you're going to create. But also it's actually not very expensive either, and it's produced incredibly well. So I think it's well worth the value you get out of it.
Yep.
So I think we both agree that if you're interested, then check it out. And we really appreciate you watching. So if you have any questions, let us know. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.